we're going to start with the top 5 ranked male players, and I'll quickly go through them. So Djokovic is 1, Medvedev is 2, Tsitsipas is 3, Nadal is 4, and Zverev is 5, right? And so sort of looking at those top 5 players, seeing how they've been performing on the hard court summer tournaments, and then sort of handicapping which ones we think have the best shot at the US Open. Okay, so I'm going to start off with Djokovic, and that's the easiest one. Obviously, he's won 3 Grand Slams, and he's trying to be the first one to win a calendar Grand Slam since Rod Laver. So it's been 60 years since somebody's been able to do that. And he clearly has to be one of the favorites. But I think if you look at what's happened so far this summer, and specifically I'm talking about the Olympics, he lost to Zverev in the semifinals, and then he lost again to Carreño Busta, which would have given him a bronze medal, but he lost. And I think the reason I think that's important is that I think it shows maybe a little bit of fatigue on his part. Also, let's be clear that the Olympics is a 3-set format, not a 5-set format. And we all know that it's a lot easier to beat a player like Djokovic in 3 sets than it is in 5 sets. It's real clear that Djokovic has a stamina advantage on any player, maybe with the exception of Nadal. And so that he's always going to be stronger in that 4th and 5th set than other players. But I do think that it's fair to say that, the sort of physical fatigue of playing a lot of matches and winning a lot of matches, and then the stress, right? Look, we know Djokovic wanted to have the Golden Slam, right? No male player has ever done that. So he wanted to win Olympic gold, and he wanted to win the US Open. And I think that was a big thing. And we saw his reaction, right? When he lost to Zverev, and then he lost to Carreño Busta. I mean, he lost his mind a little bit there, right? He threw his racket into the stands. Now, fortunately, there weren't any spectators in the stands. And then he destroyed a racket, right, against the fence post. Look, we've seen this behavior from Djokovic before, right? We saw it cost him the US Open when Dominic Thiem won, when he hit a ball at a linesperson. So it's sort of interesting, right? I mean, on the one hand, Djokovic has clearly had the best year in men's tennis, and you have to make him a favorite. On the other hand, I think the Olympics, in my mind, showed that he's feeling the pressure. He's feeling the stress a little bit. And what he's trying to accomplish is really hard. And I think he understands and appreciates the significance of this, right? Federer didn't do it. Nadal didn't do it. Nobody's done it since Rod Laver. If he were to pull off the calendar Grand Slam, it clearly puts him ahead of all the other players. And of course, that's his goal. That's what he wants. So it'll be interesting to see. The other thing is he's not playing in Canada, and he may not play at the Cincinnati Masters, right? And so that's another issue. Is he going to suffer a little bit from having not quite as much match experience as some of the other players, right? In terms of the hard courts. So, with Djokovic, I mean, I think you have to have him as a favorite, but you have to understand that the pressure of the moment and the fatigue of this whole year may be catching up with him. So I think he is beatable at the US Open. So now let's move on to the number 2 ranked male, which is Medvedev. And Medvedev has traditionally played really well on the hard court in the summer, right? So he had a nice run where he won a bunch of hard court tournaments, and then he made it to the finals of the US Open in 2019, losing to Nadal in a very close 5-set match. So I would clearly pick him as one of the favorites. I feel like hard court is his best surface. And in the past, he seems to have been able to survive the fatigue and the heat and the humidity of the hard courts, which is a big part of winning the US Open. So I would put him as a co-favorite, right, with Djokovic. So number 3 is Tsitsipas, who also is a really great player. Still hasn't won a Grand Slam event, hasn't made it, to the finals of a Grand Slam event. So while he's an extremely talented player, I don't see him in what I call a favorite position. Now, number 4 is Nadal, and I think this is a really interesting. The U.S. Open is going to be a really interesting tournament for Nadal, and the reason is he is a great competitor, and he, I'm sure, is really pissed that he lost at Roland Garros, and he doesn't want Djokovic to beat him at the US Open. He doesn't want Djokovic to get the calendar slam. And I think, you saw him make some really interesting decisions, right? He didn't play at the Olympics, right? He rested. He came back early at Washington, D.C. I think he wanted to test his game. Of course, we know he lost at Washington, D.C. to Harris. And we know that he's pulled out of Canada and Cincinnati, citing a left foot injury. But we've also seen plenty of times that Nadal has been able to practice really hard and with very little or no match experience win a Grand Slam. And he's done that several times. And I think he's really highly motivated. But here I would give a slight edge to Djokovic. I think when Djokovic plays his best and Nadal plays his best, Djokovic beats Nadal. But I think Nadal may just be fitter. He's done well at the US Open. Nadal's won the US Open 4 times. Djokovic has won the US Open 3 times, right? So it'll be really interesting. I think Nadal, is going to do everything possible to see that Djokovic doesn't get the US Open Grand Slam. And that brings me to the 5th ranked player, which is Zverev. And of course, real big thing for Zverev was he won Olympic gold in Tokyo. And that's a huge deal. He beat Djokovic in the semifinal match, a huge deal. But I have to say one thing. Zverev is not the same player in a 5-set format that he is in a 3-set format. And you can see he's won a bunch of Masters events, right? Where he's beaten players like Nadal and Djokovic in a 3-set format. But he has never won a Grand Slam. And I think he's not physically fit enough to beat players like Djokovic or Nadal in a 5-set format. So even though he won the Olympics, and even though I think he's a great player, until he proves to me that he can win with the 5-set format, and I mean, a Grand Slam where he's playing every other day, 7 matches, I don't see him as a favorite, right? So to me, I would say that 3 co-favorites in my mind are Djokovic, Nadal, and Medvedev. All right, Ted, let's turn it over to you and get your take on these top 5 players and how they're playing now and how you see them doing at the US Open.
One thing you almost talked about, physical prowess is very important, obviously, but the mental, and that's why my belief is for men's tennis, very few exceptions, you don't really start getting into your own until you're like 27 years old, because that's when your brain can finally comprehend how to build a point, how to stay cool. Okay, fine, drop this set. You've got 2 more sets, 3 more sets to get it back into play. And that's what makes Djokovic so superior to his fellows, is that his brain, like I said, it's when he's on the court, he plays like his life depends on it. And that's where Tsitsipas fell down when he played him last, is because he had some off the court issues which he allowed to creep into his brain maybe, and which what took him out. I'm not a big fan of Medvedev. I just, to me, he's a pusher. I but he's got a great brain. I mean, he knows what he's good at, and he does it very well. He's strong, he's fast, he doesn't miss, but he doesn't create winning combinations on the court, I don't think. And Zverev, I think, is starting to put together finally. He started out really, really fast, and he had a couple off years, but that's when he had to bulk up a little bit, get some weight on him, and now his brain is starting to finally catch up to his body a little bit. And he's got some good things in him. And on these hard courts, and especially at nighttime, and you're playing also with the heat too, if you look if that ball is bouncing high, he can really blow some guys off the court. So that's what I would like to see. Tsitsipas, to me, I just love that guy. I wish on his forehand, if he just torqued his body like 3 or 4 more inches with his shoulders, he could probably get another 5 to 7 miles per hour, another 50 to 100 mile rotations on the ball. He's, like I said, there's so much talent in my mind with Tsitsipas. It's not even funny. Nadal, I had a feeling he was hurt, and I don't think he will go very far in this tournament. I hope I'm wrong, because he's got such a huge brain, and he's got the competitiveness like you talked about that makes him, he's not out until the last point's over. That's just how it is with him, So as long as he's on the court, he's got a chance to win, and that's something very few guys you can say, talk about, because that's what separates guys like him from the pack. So that's my top 5.